In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where a million civilizations have risen and fallen, there exists a classification system that strikes fear into the hearts of even the most hardened space explorers. Class 1 worlds are garden paradises where life flourishes in gentle harmony. Class 5 worlds challenge visitors with harsh weather and dangerous predators. Class 10 worlds are considered uninhabitable death traps that claim the lives of seasoned warriors within hours. Then there is Earth, Class 13, the first and only world to break the scale entirely. For eons, the galactic community believed that nothing could survive on a world so hostile that it defied their understanding of life itself. The atmospheric composition alone should have been lethal. The gravitational pull should have crushed any potential inhabitants. The weather patterns should have scoured the surface clean of all organic matter. The predatory ecosystem should have consumed itself into extinction long ago. They were wrong. Not only did life survive on this impossible world, but it thrived. And when humanity finally reached for the stars, they brought with them something the galaxy had never seen before: the unbreakable spirit of a species forged in the crucible of the most dangerous world ever discovered. This is the story of how Earth's children changed everything, sending shockwaves through an ancient galaxy that thought it had seen every possible form of life. This is the story of humanity's first contact with a universe that wasn't ready for what emerged from the Class 13 Deathworld they called Earth. Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Survey Corps had seen many impossible things in his 3 centuries of service. He had witnessed the birth of stars, explored the ruins of civilizations that had fallen before his species had even learned to walk upright, and catalogued life forms so bizarre that they challenged every assumption about biology. But nothing had prepared him for the readings coming from his ship's sensors as they approached the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star in the outer rim of what the locals apparently called the Milky Way. His 4-armed form hunched over the console, double-checking the measurements for the 7th time in the past hour. The numbers remained unchanged and they made no sense whatsoever. This world shouldn't exist. More accurately, nothing should be alive on this world. Status report, he commanded in the clicking, whistling language of his people, the Kefmari. His ship, the Void Whisper, was a marvel of galactic engineering, equipped with sensors that could detect a single microbe from orbit and analyze the chemical composition of an atmosphere with perfect accuracy. Lieutenant Yaravol, his second in command, approached with the distinctive shuffling gait of her species. The Veltari were known throughout the galaxy for their scientific precision and their ability to remain calm in the face of the impossible. Today, however, she seemed genuinely shaken. "Sir, I've run the atmospheric analysis 12 times. The results are consistent." She paused, her tentacles writhing in what Zevkar recognized as extreme distress. The planet's atmosphere contains 21% oxygen. The gravitational field measures 9.8 meters per second squared. Surface temperatures vary from -40 to +50 degrees Celsius with regular violent weather patterns including electrical storms, precipitation that ranges from frozen to liquid, and wind speeds that regularly exceed 50 meters per second.
Zethkar felt his secondary heart skip a beat.
Those readings would classify this as a Class 13 Deathworld, sir. The first one ever discovered. Yaravol's voice carried a tremor that spoke of deep instinctive fear. But sir, that's not the most disturbing part. There are signs of widespread technological civilization. Electromagnetic emissions consistent with advanced communication networks. Artificial lighting visible on the night side of the planet. And what appears to be controlled fusion reactions in orbit. She gestured toward the main viewing screen, where blue and green marble hung against the starfield like a jewel. Something not only survived on this impossible world, sir. It built a civilization. The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. Every member of Zefkar's crew, representing 6 different species from across the galactic community, stared at the planet with a mixture of awe and terror. In all their combined knowledge, nothing like this had ever been encountered. "Sir," called out Navigation Officer Thrix, his insectoid form clicking nervously at his station. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet. It appears to be some form of greeting, but the mathematical structure is unlike anything in our linguistic databases." Zevkar straightened his elongated form. First contact protocols were clear, but they had never been designed for a situation like this. Put it through the universal translator. The ship's advanced AI worked for several minutes, analyzing patterns, mathematical relationships, and harmonic structures in the alien transmission. Finally, a synthesized voice filled the bridge. "Unknown vessel, this is Houston Mission Control. We have tracked your approach trajectory and confirmed you are not of Earth origin. Welcome to our solar system. We understand this may be your first contact with our species. We extend greetings and an invitation to peaceful communication. Please respond on this frequency if you wish to establish dialogue. The crew exchanged glances of amazement. Not only were these beings capable of detecting their approach from the surface of their impossibly hostile world, but they had done so with what appeared to be primitive electromagnetic technology and had immediately offered peaceful contact. "How is this possible?" whispered Yaravol. "Our stealth systems are military-grade. No Class 12 civilization should be able to detect us at this range." Zethkar studied the planet more closely. Now that he looked, he could see the signs he had initially missed. Orbital structures that weren't natural satellites, geometric patterns on the surface that spoke of massive engineering projects, and everywhere the electromagnetic signature of a civilization that was actively reaching into space. "Respond to their greeting," he ordered. Full diplomatic protocols. As the communication officer worked to establish a proper channel, Zethkar found himself confronting a reality that challenged everything the galactic community believed about the nature of life and civilization. Somewhere in the vast database of galactic knowledge, these creatures had already been classified. The planet had been surveyed by automated probes nearly 1,000 years ago and marked as uninhabitable, based on atmospheric and geological readings. No one had bothered to return because the initial survey had determined that complex life was impossible under such extreme conditions. The response from the planet came faster than expected, and this time it was accompanied by visual data. The screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be a control room filled with beings unlike anything in the galactic catalogue. They walked on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and possessed forward-facing eyes that spoke of predatory ancestry. But what struck Zethkar most forcefully was their apparent casualness about the whole situation. The being addressing them had pale skin and grey hair, and was sitting calmly in what appeared to be a chair designed for comfort rather than efficiency. Behind him, other creatures moved about their duties with the practiced ease of a civilization that had been reaching for the stars for some time. "Greetings, visitors," the being said, and Zethkar noted that the universal translator was having remarkable success with their language. "I'm James Mitchell, Director of the International Space Coordination Office. We've been hoping for this day for quite some time. We have many questions, and I'm sure you do as well. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting?" Zethkar found his voice after a moment of stunned silence. "Greetings, Director Mitchell. I am Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Survey Corps. We are indeed interested in establishing communication. However, I must ask, are you truly native to this world?" The human's face creased in what the translator identified as an expression of amusement. "Born and raised, Commander, 3rd-generation Texan. In fact, though I suppose that doesn't mean much to you. This is our home, has been for as long as our species has existed. But the conditions on your world..." Yaravol interjected, then caught herself. "Forgive me, Commander. I am Lieutenant Yaravol, the expedition's xenobiologist. Your planet's environmental conditions are... They exceed our classification system for habitability." Director Mitchell's expression shifted to one of curiosity. "How so?" "Your atmospheric pressure, gravitational field, temperature variations, weather patterns, and biological diversity create a combination that our science indicates should be impossible for complex life."
Yaravol explained, her professional training overriding her shock.
"We classify worlds on a scale from Class 1 to Class 12 based on their hostility to life. Your world measures Class 13. There was a long pause from the surface. Then Director Mitchell leaned back in his chair and made a sound that the translator identified as laughter. "Well," he said finally, "I suppose that explains why we haven't had visitors before. Most folks would probably take one look at our weather reports and decide to vacation somewhere else." His expression grew more serious. "But, Commander, I think there might be some things about Earth and humanity that your classification system doesn't account for." Over the following hours, as the Void Whisper maintained a cautious orbit, an extraordinary exchange of information took place. The humans shared data about their world and their civilization with an openness that shocked the Galactic Survey team. They spoke casually of surviving ice ages that would have extinguished most known civilizations, of adapting to environments ranging from frozen wastelands to scorching deserts, of building cities that regularly withstood natural disasters that would flatten the greatest architectural achievements of the galactic community. But it was the biological data that truly amazed the survey team. The humans shared genetic information that revealed a species that had evolved not just to survive in their hostile environment, but to thrive in it. Their cardiovascular systems were designed to function efficiently in high-gravity, high-pressure environments. Their immune systems were robust enough to handle a level of biological diversity that would overwhelm most galactic species. Their nervous systems processed information and reacted to threats with a speed that was remarkable even by galactic standards. Your musculoskeletal system, Yaravol observed during one of their exchanges, it's designed for a world with significantly higher gravity than most inhabited planets. And your immune response systems, they're military-grade by our standards. Director Mitchell nodded thoughtfully. We've always known we were a hardy bunch. Had to be, to make it this far. But you're telling us that most life in the galaxy doesn't have to deal with things like hurricanes, earthquakes, predators, disease, radiation, temperature extremes, and toxic atmospheric variations, all on the same world? Most civilizations, Zethkar replied carefully, develop on worlds that present perhaps one or two significant environmental challenges. Your world presents all of them. Simultaneously, the conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the ship's tactical officer. Commander, we have incoming vessels. Multiple craft approaching from the planet's surface at velocities that should be impossible for chemical propulsion. On the screen, they could see what appeared to be primitive spacecraft rising from Earth's surface, their exhaust trails brilliant against the blue sky. But their acceleration curves and trajectory calculations suggested technology far more advanced than their appearance indicated. Those are our people coming to say hello properly, Director Mitchell explained, apparently unconcerned by the alarm in the bridge crew's voices. Captain Sarah Chen is leading the delegation. She's one of our best pilots and a fine representative of our species. Minutes later, the first human spacecraft to achieve interplanetary flight pulled alongside the Void Whisper. It was a crude-looking vessel by galactic standards, clearly built for function rather than elegance, but the precision of its approach and the skill evident in its operation spoke of remarkable competence. The docking procedure was handled with an efficiency that impressed even Zethkar's experienced crew. When the airlock opened and the human delegation came aboard, the Galactic Survey team got their first close look at the inhabitants of the Class 13 Deathworld. Captain Chen was a compact woman with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Behind her came a mixed group of humans, representing what they explained were different geographical regions and genetic populations of their species. But despite their physical diversity, they all shared certain characteristics that became immediately apparent to the trained eyes of the survey team. They moved with the controlled grace of apex predators. Their eyes tracked potential threats and escape routes automatically. Their posture and muscle tone spoke of beings who lived in a state of constant readiness for physical challenges. Even in the controlled environment of the ship, they remained alert and prepared in a way that suggested deep, evolutionary programming. But perhaps most remarkably, they seemed genuinely delighted by the meeting. "This is incredible," Captain Chen said, looking around the bridge with obvious fascination. "We've dreamed of this moment for centuries. To finally meet other intelligent life, to learn that we're not alone. It's everything our species has hoped for." As the formal introductions proceeded, Zethkar found himself grappling with a growing realization. These humans weren't just survivors of a hostile world. They were the products of that world, shaped by it in ways that made them fundamentally different from every other known form of intelligent life. Their casual attitude toward danger, their adaptability, their apparent comfort with challenges that would terrify most galactic citizens. It all painted a picture of a species unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. The implications were staggering. If humans could not only survive but thrive in conditions that exceeded the galactic classification system, what did that mean for their potential as a spacefaring civilization? What would happen when a species evolved for survival in the most hostile environment ever discovered began to spread among the stars? As the day wore on and the exchange of information continued, Zethkar began to understand that this first contact would change everything. The galaxy was about to meet a new kind of citizen, one forged in conditions so extreme that they defied conventional understanding of what was possible. Looking at the blue and green world turning slowly below his ship, Zethkar realized that Earth had been preparing its children for something far greater than mere survival. It had been preparing them to carry their strength, their adaptability, and their unbreakable spirit to the stars themselves. The Class 13 Deathworld had not just produced life against all odds, it had produced humanity. And the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months had passed since the Void Whisper had returned to the galactic capital of Nexus Prime, carrying with it the most significant discovery in recorded galactic history. The massive space station that served as the seat of government for over 10,000 civilizations buzzed with activity, as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session of the Galactic Congress. Ambassador Velthar of the ancient Shardari Empire stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into dancing patterns across the curved walls. For 15,000 years, the Shardari had been the galaxy's premier experts on xenobiology and planetary classification. Their voice carried enormous weight in matters of first contact and species integration. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice resonating through the translation matrix that allowed thousands of different species to communicate, "we face an unprecedented situation. The discovery of intelligent life on the world designated as Earth requires us to fundamentally reconsider our understanding of the limits of biological possibility." In the vast amphitheater, beings from across the galaxy shifted uneasily. The preliminary reports had been circulating for weeks, but many had dismissed them as errors or exaggerations. The idea of a Class 13 Deathworld supporting not just life but technological civilization challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. High Counselor Zerthan, whose species had been exploring the galaxy for millennia, leaned forward in his biomechanical chair. "Ambassador Velthar, surely you're not suggesting that the classification system developed over thousands of years of scientific observation is somehow incorrect?" "I'm suggesting, High Counselor, that our classification system was insufficient to account for what we have now discovered." Velthar activated the chamber's holographic display, showing a rotating model of Earth. "This world presents environmental challenges that exceed our previous understanding of what constitutes a habitable planet." The display zoomed in to show Earth's weather patterns, and a collective gasp arose from the assembly. Massive storm systems spiraled across the planet's surface, electrical discharges lighting up entire continents. Hurricane-force winds scoured vast areas, while other regions experienced temperature variations that would require emergency life support for most galactic species. The atmospheric composition includes not only high concentrations of oxygen, which is corrosive to many forms of life, but also significant quantities of water vapor, creating an unstable reactive environment. Velthar continued, "The gravitational field is nearly twice that of most inhabited worlds. The tectonic activity regularly reshapes the planet's surface through violent geological events." Representative Cathara of the Peaceful Luminari spoke up, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with distress. "Surely no intelligent species could develop under such conditions. The constant stress, the energy required simply to survive, it would prohibit the development of culture, science, technology." "That," said a new voice from the gallery, "is where you'd be wrong." The assembly turned to see Director James Mitchell walking down the central aisle, flanked by Captain Sarah Chen and Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's first xenobiologist. The humans moved with a fluid confidence that many in the assembly found unsettling. Even in this controlled environment, surrounded by the galaxy's most advanced technology, they maintained the alert posture of beings accustomed to constant vigilance. The sight of the humans in person sent ripples of unease through the chamber. They were smaller than many species, but there was something about their presence that commanded attention. Their forward-facing eyes, their predatory gait, the easy way they carried themselves in the high-gravity environment of the station, everything about them spoke of danger barely contained beneath a veneer of civilization. "Director Mitchell," High Counselor Gerfan said, rising from his chair, "the Congress recognizes the representative of Earth." There was still uncertainty in his voice, as if he couldn't quite believe he was addressing beings from a Class 13 world. Mitchell stepped to the center of the chamber, and the translation matrix adjusted to his language patterns. "Thank you, High Counselor. My colleagues and I are honored to address this assembly. We understand that our existence has caused some concern in your scientific community." Rodriguez activated a portable data projector, displaying holographic images of Earth's diverse environments, scenes of humans living and working in Arctic conditions, in scorching deserts, in the depths of ocean trenches, and in the thin atmosphere of high mountain peaks. "What your classification system defines as hostile conditions," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades studying the relationship between species and environment, "we call Tuesday. Humans have not just survived on Earth. We've colonized every environment the planet has to offer." The display showed human cities built in regions that would require constant life support for most galactic species. Children playing in weather that would send other civilizations into emergency shelters. Workers operating normally in conditions that exceeded the emergency tolerance limits for most known life forms. Captain Chen stepped forward, her pilot's instincts reading the mood of the room. "I think what's causing confusion here is the assumption that hostile conditions automatically prevent the development of intelligence and civilization. From our perspective, it's quite the opposite." She gestured to the display. which now showed human technological development over time. Constant environmental pressure didn't inhibit our development. It accelerated it. Every challenge our world threw at us forced us to become more adaptable, more resilient, more innovative. Representative Zalthi of the aquatic Murdan species spoke up, his translator struggling with the complex harmonics of his underwater language. But the energy cost of surviving in such an environment, how do you allocate resources for advancement when all your efforts must go toward basic survival? Mitchell smiled, an expression that the translation matrix conveyed as predatory amusement to several species in the assembly. That's exactly the point, Representative. We didn't have the luxury of easy survival. Every calorie had to be earned. Every shelter had to be built to withstand disasters. Every piece of technology had to work under extreme conditions. It made us efficient in ways that easier worlds never could. Dr. Rodriguez brought up new displays showing human physiology compared to average galactic norms. The differences were startling. Human cardiovascular systems that functioned optimally under high gravity and atmospheric pressure. Immune systems that could handle biological diversity that would overwhelm most species. Nervous systems that processed information and reacted to threats with remarkable speed. We didn't develop intelligence despite our world's hostility, she explained. We developed intelligence because of it. Every human alive today carries the genetic legacy of ancestors who survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, predators, and environmental changes that would have extinguished most civilizations. The assembly was silent as the implications sank in. Representative Yultan of the scholarly Brathi collective finally spoke, his multiple voices harmonizing in what the translator identified as deep concern. If this is true, then these humans are not simply another species to be integrated into galactic civilization. They represent something entirely new, a form of intelligence shaped by conditions that exceed our understanding of environmental limits. Ambassador Velfar nodded slowly. Which brings us to the central question facing this assembly. How do we integrate a species whose baseline capabilities exceed the extreme tolerances of most galactic citizens? High Counselor Zerthan activated his personal display, showing standard integration protocols used for new civilizations. Our traditional approach involves gradual introduction to galactic technology and culture, with careful monitoring to prevent cultural shock or technological dependency. With respect, High Counselor, Captain Chen interjected, I don't think your traditional approach applies here. They were crude by galactic standards, built with heavy materials and over-engineered safety systems. But as the technical specifications appeared, the assembly began to understand why. Our spacecraft are designed to launch from a Class 13 world and operate in environments that would destroy most galactic vessels, she explained. Our life support systems are built to function when everything else fails. Our navigation systems account for gravitational and magnetic fields that most civilizations never encounter, Dr. Rodriguez added. When you've evolved on a world where a minor equipment failure means death, you build things differently. Our technology may look primitive, but it's proven under conditions that would test your best military hardware. The implications were staggering. Not only were humans physiologically adapted to survive in impossible conditions, but their technology was likewise over-engineered for reliability under extreme stress. They weren't just another species seeking integration into galactic civilization. They were potentially the most capable beings the galaxy had ever encountered. Representative Mgara of the warrior caste Torvani spoke for the first time, her massive form rising to its full height. There is another consideration. If these humans are as adaptable and resilient as they claim, what are their intentions toward the rest of the galaxy? The question sent a chill through the assembly. The Torvani had built their civilization on the principle that the strong dominated the weak. If humans were truly stronger than any known species, what did that mean for galactic stability? Mitchell's expression grew serious. Representative Megara, I understand your concern, but I think you misunderstand something fundamental about humanity. Yes, we're survivors. Yes, we're adaptable. But we're also social creatures who've learned that cooperation is often more effective than conflict. He gestured to his companions. Dr. Rodriguez here represents our scientific community, which has always been international and collaborative. Captain Chen comes from our military tradition, which despite its combative origins has evolved toward peacekeeping and protection. I represent our diplomatic corps, which exists because we learned that talking is usually better than fighting. Usually? Representative Mgara challenged. Chen stepped forward, her posture shifting slightly in a way that every predatory species in the assembly recognized. When talking fails, Representative, we're very good at fighting too. But we prefer not to. because we've learned that war is expensive and victory is temporary. The chamber fell silent again. The humans hadn't threatened anyone, but the casual way they discussed their capacity for violence made it clear that their peaceful intentions were a choice, not a limitation. Ambassador Velthar broke the silence. This brings us to the practical matter at hand. If we accept Earth into galactic civilization, how do we manage the integration of a species whose capabilities so dramatically exceed galactic norms? Perhaps, suggested Dr. Rodriguez, the question isn't how to manage us, but how we can contribute to galactic civilization. We've spent our entire evolutionary history learning to survive and thrive under impossible conditions. Maybe there are problems in the galaxy that could benefit from our particular skill set. High Counselor Zirthan accessed the galactic database, displaying a list of ongoing challenges facing galactic civilization. Failed terraforming projects on hostile worlds. Colonies struggling in extreme environments. Exploration missions to dangerous regions of space that had been repeatedly postponed due to their lethal conditions. There are indeed challenges, he admitted, that have resisted conventional solutions due to environmental extremes that exceed safe operating parameters for most species. Mitchell nodded. Then perhaps our role in galactic civilization isn't as junior partners learning from more advanced species. Perhaps we can be the specialists you call when the going gets tough. The Assembly considered this. Throughout galactic history, most species had found their niche based on their particular strengths. The scholarly species provided research and education. The artistic species contributed culture and beauty. The industrial species built the infrastructure that held civilization together. Humanity's niche might be unique in galactic history. They could be the species that went where others couldn't go, survived what others couldn't survive, and solved problems that others couldn't solve. Representative Cathara's bioluminescent patterns shifted to what the translator identified as cautious optimism. If humanity's proposal is to serve as specialists in extreme environments, what assurances can you provide that your capabilities won't be used for conquest or domination? Captain Chen smiled, and this time the expression was genuinely warm rather than predatory. Representative, we come from a world where everyone's a potential threat, and survival depends on building alliances. We learn cooperation not because we're weak, but because we're strong enough to choose it, Dr. Rodriguez added. Besides, we're not interested in ruling the galaxy. We're interested in exploring it. There are 10,000 civilizations here, each with their own knowledge, culture, and perspective. Why would we want to dominate that when we could learn from it? Mitchell concluded, what we're offering is partnership, not conquest. We'll go where the galaxy needs us to go, do what the galaxy needs us to do, and in return, we'll learn from civilizations that have had millions of years to develop science, art, philosophy, and culture while we were busy learning to survive. The debate that followed lasted for hours. But gradually, a consensus began to emerge. Humanity's integration into galactic civilization would be unlike any previous first contact. They wouldn't be junior partners requiring protection and guidance. They would be specialized contributors whose unique capabilities could benefit the entire galaxy. As the session concluded, High Counselor Zarathan made the formal announcement. The Galactic Congress hereby welcomes Earth and humanity as full members of galactic civilization, with special recognition of their expertise in extreme environment operations. The vote was nearly unanimous, with only a few species abstaining due to lingering concerns about humanity's potential for violence. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, many of them were already making plans to consult with their new human colleagues about projects that had been considered impossible due to environmental extremes. Ambassador Velthar approached the human delegation. Director Mitchell, I believe this partnership will be beneficial for all involved. But I must ask, are there more surprises we should expect from your species? Mitchell exchanged glances with his colleagues, then smiled. Ambassador, we've been on our best behavior so far. Just wait until you see what happens when we really get comfortable. The crystalline being's form flickered in what might have been amusement or concern. I suspect, Director, that the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place. As the humans left the assembly hall, heading back to their ship for the journey home, they carried with them formal invitations to participate in dozens of projects that had been stalled by environmental challenges. The galaxy had problems that needed solving. And for the first time in galactic history, there was a species tough enough to solve them. The Class 13 Deathworld had sent its children to the stars, and the galaxy was about to discover what humanity could accomplish when they were no longer fighting just to survive. 6 months after humanity's integration into galactic civilization, the first real test of their capabilities came in the form of an emergency transmission from the Outer Rim territories. The message reached the Galactic Emergency Response Center on Nexus Prime at 0347 Standard Galactic Time, and within minutes it had been escalated to the highest levels of government. Admiral Cassasara of the Galactic Defense Fleet stood in the Crisis Command Center, her 6 arms working multiple displays as she processed the incoming data. The veteran commander had seen action in 3 major conflicts and countless smaller crises, but the readings from the Kepler 442 system had her genuinely concerned. "Status report," she commanded, her translator broadcasting her words to the Mixed Species Emergency Response Team. Lieutenant Commander Thrax, a hulking member of the Gorthani species known for their analytical abilities, gestured to the main display. "Admiral, the colony ship New Horizon was attempting to establish the first settlement on Kepler 442b when they encountered severe difficulties. The planet's environmental conditions were significantly more hostile than initial surveys indicated. The display showed a world that looked deceptively Earth-like from orbit, but the sensor data told a different story. Atmospheric pressure variations that could crush standard habitation domes, electromagnetic storms that disabled conventional electronics, temperature swings that exceeded the operational parameters of most galactic technology, and geological activity that had already claimed 3 landing sites. Current status of the colonists? Admiral Casseza asked. 2,300 beings from 7 different species, currently sheltering in their ship in a deteriorating orbit. Thrax replied grimly. Their life support systems are failing, their shuttlecraft have been destroyed by atmospheric conditions, and standard rescue operations are impossible due to the planet's environmental extremes. Science Officer Yilnara, whose species had the galaxy's most advanced atmospheric modeling capabilities, brought up additional data. Admiral, preliminary analysis suggests that Kepler 442b is experiencing a planetary-scale environmental crisis. Solar radiation fluctuations are causing massive atmospheric disturbances, while tidal forces from the system's binary stars are triggering unprecedented seismic activity. Admiral Cassara studied the data with growing concern. In galactic terms, this was a routine rescue operation that had become impossible due to environmental factors. The colony ship couldn't land safely, couldn't maintain orbit indefinitely, and couldn't evacuate its passengers using conventional methods. "What about the Torvani Heavy Rescue Corps?" she asked, referring to the galaxy's premier emergency response specialists. Commander Thrax's expression grew even grimmer. "They've declared the mission impossible, Admiral. Environmental conditions exceed their equipment tolerances by factors of 10 or more. They estimate a 95% casualty rate for any rescue attempt using conventional methods." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. 2,000 colonists were going to die because the galaxy's best rescue specialists couldn't operate in conditions that barely qualified as a mild crisis by Earth standards. "Admiral," came a voice from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from the human delegation." Admiral Cassara had been briefing herself on humanity's capabilities ever since their integration into galactic civilization. The reports were impressive but seemed too extraordinary to be entirely credible. "Put them through." The main display shifted to show Captain Sarah Chen standing in what appeared to be a human command center. Behind her, Admiral Cassara could see beings moving with the purposeful efficiency she'd learned to associate with military operations, but what struck her most was the complete absence of panic or concern on the human faces. "Admiral Cassara," Captain Chen said, her voice calm and professional. "We've been monitoring the emergency broadcasts from Kepler 442. We'd like to offer our assistance." "Captain Chen, while we appreciate the gesture, this situation requires specialized equipment and training that—" The Admiral paused, reconsidering. "What exactly are you proposing?" "We're proposing a full evacuation of the colony ship," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "Our analysis indicates that while the environmental conditions are severe, they fall within acceptable parameters for human rescue operations." Lieutenant Commander Thrax checked his displays again. "Captain, the atmospheric pressure variations alone would crush most spacecraft. The electromagnetic interference would disable standard electronics, and the seismic activity would make surface operations impossible." Captain Chen nodded. "Yes, those conditions would be challenging for most species, but humans have been dealing with similar environments for thousands of years. What you're describing sounds a lot like a Category 5 hurricane combined with a major earthquake, possibly during a solar storm. We call that Tuesday in Florida during a bad year." The comparison was lost on most of the command center staff, but Admiral Cassara was beginning to understand. "Captain, are you saying that your species regularly operates in conditions comparable to what we're seeing on Kepler 442b? "Admiral, We're saying that what you're seeing on Kepler 442b is what we call normal weather for a Class 13 world. Our rescue equipment is designed to operate under these conditions because on Earth we don't have the luxury of waiting for good weather to save lives. Dr. Elena Rodriguez appeared on screen beside Captain Chen. Admiral, we've run detailed simulations based on the sensor data from Kepler 442b. The environmental conditions are well within the operational parameters of human emergency response equipment. More importantly, they're well within the tolerance ranges that human physiology evolved to handle.
Admiral Kesara felt a flicker of hope for the first time since the crisis began.
What would you need to mount a rescue operation? We already have 3 heavy rescue ships en route from Earth, Captain Chen replied. They should arrive at Kepler 442 within 18 hours. Each ship is equipped to evacuate up to 1,000 beings under extreme environmental conditions. Commander Thorax was studying the technical specifications that the humans had transmitted. Captain, these vessels appear to be constructed using extremely heavy materials and primitive technology. Commander, what you're calling primitive technology is actually robust technology, Dr. Rodriguez explained. When you can't rely on environmental controls, you build equipment that works no matter what conditions it encounters. Our electronics are hardened against electromagnetic interference. Our hull materials are designed to withstand pressure variations and physical impacts, and our life support systems function independently of external conditions. Admiral Kesara was beginning to understand why humanity had evolved such conservative engineering practices. When your home world regularly tried to kill you, you learned to build things that couldn't be broken by environmental extremes. Captain, assuming your vessels can reach the colony ship, how do you propose to evacuate 2,000 beings of different species with varying life support requirements? Standard procedure, Admiral. Captain Chen replied. We assess individual needs, provide appropriate environmental suits or life support modules, and extract everyone to secure locations. The main challenge will be coordinating the evacuation to minimize exposure time for species that aren't adapted to high-stress environments. The casual way she discussed the operation was perhaps the most reassuring thing Admiral Kesara had heard in hours. These humans weren't approaching this as an impossible mission. They were approaching it as a routine rescue operation with some unusual environmental factors. Permission granted, Captain. Admiral Kesara said. What support do you need from Galactic Fleet units? Just stay clear of the operational area, Captain Chen replied. Standard human rescue protocols involve a lot of rapid maneuvering in unpredictable conditions. We don't want to accidentally ram a galactic cruiser while we're pulling people out of a gravity well. 18 hours later, Admiral Kesara watched from the bridge of the fleet command ship as 3 human rescue vessels approached Kepler 442b. The ships were ugly, functional things that looked like they'd been built in a scrapyard, but their approach to the planet was flawless. While galactic vessels would have required extensive navigation calculations to account for the gravitational anomalies and electromagnetic interference, the human ships simply powered through the interference, using what appeared to be brute force engineering solutions. The colony ship New Horizon was in a slowly degrading orbit, its hull already showing stress fractures from the planet's gravitational fluctuations. Its crew had given up hope of rescue hours ago. Captain Martinez of the colony ship merely wept when the human vessels appeared on his sensors. This is Captain Martinez of the New Horizon. Are you really here to get us out of this nightmare? Copy that, New Horizon, came the reply from the lead human rescue ship. This is Commander Jackson, aboard the Thunderchild. We're here to take you home. Prepare for docking operations. What followed was a masterclass in emergency evacuation procedures. The human ships maneuvered with a precision that defied the chaotic conditions around the planet. Their docking systems locked onto the colony ship despite gravitational fluctuations that should have made such operations impossible. Most importantly, their crews moved through the colony ship with the calm efficiency of people who dealt with life-or-death situations regularly. Galactic Fleet Command, this is Commander Jackson, came the transmission as the evacuation proceeded. We're seeing some interesting adaptations among the different species aboard. The Kefmari are handling the stress well, but the Luminari are having difficulty with the electromagnetic interference. We're providing specialized life support modules for the affected individuals. Admiral Kesara watched the operation with growing amazement. The humans weren't just rescuing the colonists. They were providing individualized care for species they'd only learned about months ago, adapting their procedures on the fly to account for physiological differences they'd never encountered before. Admiral, reported Science Officer Yilnara,
The human vessels are maintaining perfect formation despite gravitational anomalies that would disperse a normal fleet.
Their navigation systems appear to be compensating for environmental factors in real time. More impressive was the way the human crews interacted with the rescued colonists. Species that had been paralyzed with terror at their situation began to calm down when they encountered humans who treated the deadly environment around Kepler 442b as merely challenging rather than impossible. How are they doing this? Commander Thrax wondered aloud as he watched the evacuation proceed with mechanical efficiency. Rodriguez, who was monitoring the operation from one of the human ships, answered over the communication link. Commander, every human rescue worker has trained for conditions like this since childhood. On Earth, we have emergency drills for earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and solar storms. What you're seeing is the result of a civilization that's been perfecting emergency response procedures for thousands of years. The evacuation was completed in under 6 hours. 3 human ships departed Kepler 442, carrying 2,000 colonists who had been resigned to death just hours before. As they reached safe distance from the planet, the celebration that erupted among the rescued beings was transmitted across the galaxy. But perhaps the most significant moment came when Captain Martinez of the New Horizon addressed the human rescue crews. Commander Jackson, I've been a colony ship captain for 30 years. I've seen rescue operations by the best crews in the galaxy. But what you've done today, this was impossible by every measure we use to evaluate mission feasibility. Commander Jackson's reply was broadcast to every ship in the fleet. Captain, with respect, impossible is a relative term. What's impossible for beings from normal worlds is just Tuesday for people from Earth. The galaxy's a big, dangerous place, and somebody's got to be crazy enough to go where it's dangerous. Admiral Kesasara found herself smiling as she processed the implications of what she'd just witnessed. The galaxy had spent millennia developing technology and procedures designed to avoid dangerous environments. Humanity had spent the same amount of time developing the skills and equipment needed to thrive in dangerous environments. As the human rescue ships began their journey back to inhabited space, carrying their precious cargo of grateful colonists, Admiral Kasara composed her report to Galactic Fleet Command. Mission summary: complete success. Human rescue operations exceeded all expectations and accomplished what conventional analysis deemed impossible. Recommendation: immediate expansion of human involvement in galactic emergency response operations. She paused, then added a personal note. It appears that having a species from a Class 13 Deathworld in our alliance is going to make many previously impossible missions suddenly achievable. 442 became legendary throughout galactic civilization, but for humanity it was simply proof of concept. They had demonstrated that their unique capabilities could save lives and solve problems that the galaxy had previously considered unsolvable. More importantly, it established humanity's role in galactic civilization not as junior partners learning from more advanced species, but as specialized experts whose skills were desperately needed in a universe full of dangerous environments and impossible challenges. The Class 13 Deathworld had sent its children to the stars, and the galaxy was discovering that sometimes the impossible was just another job for the right species. The discovery came from the deepest archives of the Eternal Library on Zirion Prime, hidden within data crystals that had been sealed for over 50,000 years. Archivists working on humanity's integration had been cross-referencing galactic historical records when they stumbled upon references that made no sense according to conventional understanding of galactic history. Dr. Seren Koltis, the galaxy's foremost expert on ancient civilizations, stood before an emergency assembly of the Galactic Council's senior leadership. Her four-armed form trembled slightly as she presented findings that challenged everything the galaxy believed about its own past. Council members, she began, her crystalline voice carrying harmonics of deep concern. Our investigation into historical records has revealed evidence of what we can only classify as the greatest threat galactic civilization has ever faced. The assembled representative shifted uneasily.
Dr. Ku?
Cultis was not given to dramatic statements, and her reputation for conservative analysis made her current demeanor all the more troubling. High Counselor Zerthan leaned forward in his biomechanical throne. Dr. Haltis, please proceed with your findings. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing star charts dating back to the earliest period of galactic record-keeping. Approximately 52,000 years ago, galactic civilization encountered a species we have designated as the Devourers. They were not native to our galaxy, and initial contact occurred in what is now the Cygnus Arm. The display zoomed to show a region of space that was currently empty, marked only by dead star systems and planetary debris. The Devourers were unlike any form of life previously encountered. They did not seek territory, resources, or dominance in any conventional sense. They consumed entire worlds, stripping them of all biological matter and leaving behind dead husks. Representative Mgada of the warrior caste Torvani spoke up, her massive form bristling with tension. Dr. Cultus, if such a threat existed, why are there no records in our historical databases? Because, Representative Mgara, the galactic government of that era, classified all information about the Devourers and sealed it in the deepest archives. The official records were sanitized to remove any reference to the threat. Dr. Hultus activated new displays showing before and after images of star systems. Over the course of 3,000 years, the Devourers consumed over 400 inhabited worlds and eliminated an estimated 12 billion sentient beings. The chamber fell into shocked silence as the magnitude of the ancient catastrophe became clear. The death toll exceeded anything in recorded galactic history by several orders of magnitude. How was the threat finally eliminated? Asked Ambassador Velthar of the Shadari Empire, her crystalline form flickering with what her species displayed as deep unease. Dr. Holtis hesitated before answering. According to the sealed records, it wasn't eliminated, it was contained. She brought up star charts showing the current galactic configuration. 50,000 years ago, the combined might of galactic civilization constructed a containment barrier around the Devourers' occupied territory. The barrier was designed to prevent their expansion beyond a designated quarantine zone. The display highlighted a region of space in the outer rim, marked by navigation warnings that attributed the dead zone to natural stellar phenomena. It was an area that no galactic vessel had visited in recorded history, avoided due to supposedly lethal radiation levels and gravitational anomalies. The barrier has contained them for 50 millennia, Dr. Kaltis continued. But recent sensor data suggests that their containment may be failing. High Counselor Zerthan accessed his personal database, cross-referencing the information. Dr. Cultus, if this containment barrier has held for 50,000 years, what evidence suggests it's failing now? 3 months ago, automated monitoring stations in the Outer Rim began detecting energy signatures consistent with ancient Devourer technology. 2 weeks ago, we lost contact with a deep space research station near the containment zone. And yesterday, she paused, her form dimming with what her species expressed as fear. Yesterday, we received a transmission from something inside the quarantine zone. The chamber erupted in alarmed voices from dozens of species as the implications sank in. A threat that had once consumed entire civilizations was potentially breaking free after 50,000 years of containment. What did the transmission contain? Admiral Kisara of the Galactic Defense Fleet asked, her military training overriding her shock. Dr. O. Cultis activated an audio file. What emerged from the speakers was unlike any form of communication in galactic databases. It wasn't language in any conventional sense, but a series of harmonics that seemed to resonate directly with the primitive fear centers of most species' brains. When the playback ended, several representatives were visibly shaken. The sound had conveyed no specific information, but had somehow communicated pure, predatory hunger on a scale that transcended individual survival instincts. Analysis suggests this is a form of psychic broadcasting. Dr. Cultus explained. The Devourers appear to communicate through direct neural interface, bypassing conventional language entirely. The message content can be summarized as, "We hunger. We come." Representative Cathara of the Luminari, her bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically, voiced what many were thinking. What defensive capabilities do we possess against a threat that consumed 12 billion beings and required the combined might of ancient galactic civilization to contain? Admiral Cassara was already running tactical analyses. Dr. Hultis, what records exist regarding the Devourer's capabilities and vulnerabilities? The historian brought up new displays showing ancient battle reports and tactical assessments. They appeared to be a collective intelligence operating through biological constructs that adapt rapidly to any form of attack. Conventional weapons proved ineffective, as did biological warfare, energy weapons, and even stellar engineering attempts to destroy their base systems. She paused at a particular record, her form brightening with what might have been hope. However, there is one interesting note in the ancient records. The Devourers were apparently unable to successfully consume worlds with extreme environmental conditions. Several planets with Class 10 or higher environmental hostility ratings were abandoned by the Devourers after unsuccessful attempts at biological extraction. High Counselor Zerthan was the first to grasp the implication. Are you suggesting that environmental extremes provide some form of defense against devourer consumption?
More than that, Counselor.
The records suggest that the devourer's biological absorption mechanisms are optimized for life forms adapted to moderate environmental conditions. Extreme environmental adaptations appear to be incompatible with their consumption processes. The chamber fell silent as every being present reached the same conclusion simultaneously. There was only one species in current galactic civilization that had evolved under environmental conditions extreme enough to potentially resist devourer consumption. Admiral Kessara was the first to voice it. We need to contact Earth immediately. The emergency communication with Earth was established within hours, connecting the Galactic Council's Crisis Center with humanity's newly established Deep Space Command. The human response to the briefing was everything the galaxy had come to expect from Earth's children, and nothing like what other species might have provided. Director James Mitchell listened to the entire presentation without interruption, occasionally making notes on a primitive paper pad that several species found quaint. Captain Sarah Chen stood behind him, her expression growing more interested rather than more concerned as the briefing progressed. When Dr. Kaltis finished her presentation, Mitchell was quiet for several moments before responding. So let me make sure I understand this correctly, he said finally. 50,000 years ago, the galaxy encountered a species of planet-eating monsters that consumed billions of people before they could be contained. Now the containment is failing, and these monsters are potentially immune to every form of attack the galaxy has ever developed. That is correct, Director Mitchell. Dr. Bed, Kaltis confirmed. Mitchell nodded thoughtfully. And you believe that humans might be able to resist their consumption process because we evolved under environmental conditions that are too extreme for their biological systems to handle? The ancient records suggest this possibility, yes.
Captain Chen stepped forward.
Director, if I may? At Mitchell's nod, she addressed the galactic leadership directly. Council members, we appreciate you bringing this threat to our attention. We'll obviously do everything we can to help defend galactic civilization. Admiral Kessara found herself both relieved and concerned by the human response. Captain, do you understand the magnitude of what we're discussing? These entities consumed entire star systems. Chen's smile was sharp and predatory. Admiral, we understand perfectly. What you're describing sounds like the ultimate invasive species. Humanity has been dealing with invasive species for our entire evolutionary history. The difference is scale, not concept. Dr. Rodriguez, joining the communication from Earth's Deep Space Research Facility, brought up displays showing human pest control and environmental management techniques. The galactic approach to the devourer threat has been containment, which is a viable short-term strategy. But any biologist will tell you that containment without elimination just delays the problem. What are you suggesting? High Counselor Zerthan asked. We're suggesting that the galaxy has been thinking about this all wrong, Mitchell replied. You've been treating the devourers as an unstoppable force that can only be contained, but from our perspective, they're just another apex predator that needs to be managed. Representative Imgara leaned forward. Director Mitchell, these entities eliminated 12 billion beings.
Representative, humans have eliminated species that were ecological apex predators.
We've driven creatures to extinction that were perfectly adapted to their environments and had no natural enemies except us. Mitchell's tone was matter-of-fact rather than boastful. The difference between humans and most galactic species is that we've never accepted that any threat is truly unstoppable. Admiral Kessara felt a familiar mixture of admiration and unease that seemed to characterize all interactions with humanity. What would you need to mount a defensive operation against the devourers?
Captain Chen exchanged glances with her colleagues.
Admiral, I don't think you're thinking big enough. We're not talking about mounting a defensive operation. We're talking about hunting them down and eliminating the threat permanently. The silence from the galactic leadership was profound. The idea of actively hunting entities that had terrorized galactic civilization 50,000 years ago was so audacious that most species couldn't process it as a serious suggestion. Dr. Fakir, Rodriguez brought up tactical assessments that human military analysts had been preparing during the briefing. Our preliminary analysis suggests that the devourer's strength is also their weakness. They're optimized for consumption of standard galactic life forms, which means they're specifically adapted to creatures that evolved under moderate environmental conditions. But humans didn't evolve under moderate environmental conditions, Chen continued. We evolved under conditions that the galaxy classifies as impossible for complex life. If the Devourers can't process life forms adapted to extreme environments, then not only are we immune to their primary attack method, but we might be toxic to them, Mitchell concluded. What the galaxy needs isn't a better containment system. It needs a species crazy enough to walk into the quarantine zone and start a fight with something that eats planets. As the communication ended, the Galactic Council found itself facing a decision that would have been unthinkable just hours before. Instead of preparing for the greatest defensive operation in galactic history, they were considering the possibility of the first offensive operation against the Devourers in 50,000 years. High Counselor Zerthan summed up what many were thinking. I believe we're about to discover whether humanity's confidence in their abilities is justified, or whether we're about to witness the end of galactic civilization. Admiral Kesara, studying the tactical projections that human analysts had provided, found herself believing it might be both. One thing is certain, Counselor. The galaxy is about to change in ways we never imagined possible. The ancient threat that had terrorized galactic civilization for millennia was about to encounter something it had never faced before. A species from a Class 13 Deathworld that had never learned to accept the impossible. The assault fleet that departed from Earth 6 months after the Devourer crisis was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 50 human warships, each one a testament to humanity's philosophy of building things that couldn't be broken, formed the core of the largest offensive operation in galactic history. Admiral Sarah Chen, recently promoted to command the Joint Human Galactic Fleet, stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable as they approached the quarantine zone's outer markers. Around her, the mixed human and alien crew worked with the grim efficiency that had become humanity's signature in galactic military operations. The past months had been a whirlwind of preparation, technological integration, and strategic planning that had challenged every assumption about what was possible in galactic warfare. The Galactic Defense Fleet had contributed advanced sensors, communication systems, and theoretical expertise. Humanity had contributed something the galaxy had never possessed: weapons and tactics designed for fighting enemies that conventional wisdom deemed unbeatable. Admiral, reported Navigation Officer Kim, a young human whose calm demeanor belied the fact that she was helping to navigate the first offensive mission against an enemy that had consumed billions. We're approaching the quarantine barrier. Sensor readings confirm the containment field is failing exactly as Dr. Kaltis predicted. On the main display, the ancient containment barrier flickered and sparked across vast distances of space. Technology that had held for 50 millennia was finally breaking down, and through the gaps, sensor readings showed movement that made even the hardened bridge crew uncomfortable. Tactical assessment, Commander Vextar, Admiral Chen requested of her Kethmari tactical officer, whose species' analytical abilities had proven invaluable in preparing for combat against an unknown enemy. Admiral, sensors indicate approximately 47 distinct Devourer constructs within the quarantine zone, ranging from planetary-scale entities to smaller mobile units. Energy readings suggest they have been preparing for their release. The alien officer's forearms worked multiple displays as streams of data flowed across his screens. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, serving as the fleet's senior xenobiologist, studied the readings with fascination rather than fear. Admiral, preliminary scans confirm our theoretical models. The Devourer constructs are showing stress signatures when they encounter the background radiation from our human crew members. It had been one of the most extraordinary discoveries of the preparation phase. Human physiology, adapted to survive on a Class 13 Deathworld, apparently produced biochemical signatures that were toxic to Devourer biological systems. Not immediately lethal, but genuinely harmful in a way that nothing else in galactic history had managed to achieve. Fleet status, Commander Jackson? Admiral Chen requested. Commander Robert Jackson, humanity's most experienced deep space tactical officer, coordinated responses from across the massive fleet formation. All human vessels report ready for combat operations. Galactic Defense Fleet units are maintaining support positions as planned. All systems are functioning within normal parameters. The Joint Fleet represented an unprecedented level of cooperation between humanity and galactic civilization. Human ships provided the firepower and armor capable of surviving direct contact with Devourer entities. Galactic ships provided advanced sensors, communication networks, and logistical support that multiplied the effectiveness of human offensive capabilities.
Admiral, came a transmission from the Galactic Fleet command ship Eternal Unity. This is High Admiral Fexar.
All galactic units are in position to support your assault. Are you certain about proceeding with direct engagement rather than enhanced containment? Admiral Chen smiled, an expression that her mixed crew had learned to interpret as supreme confidence in the face of impossible odds. Hi, Admiral. Containment failed once and it's failing again. Sometimes the only way to solve a problem is to eliminate it permanently. As the fleet crossed into the quarantine zone, the sensors began detecting energy signatures that defied conventional understanding of physics. The Devourers weren't just biological entities. They were something that existed at the intersection of biology and technology, using principles that galactic science had never encountered. "Contact," reported Tactical Officer Vextar. "Multiple Devourer constructs approaching our position. Configurations suggest scouting rather than full assault patterns." On the main display, the first clear images of active Devourer entities appeared. They were simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. Massive structures that seemed to flow and shift like living creatures while maintaining the geometric precision of advanced technology. Some were the size of asteroids, others dwarfed small moons, but all of them radiated an alien intelligence that made them far more disturbing than any conventional enemy. "Analysis suggests they're attempting to understand our fleet composition," Dr. Rodriguez reported. "But, Admiral, look at their approach patterns. They're maintaining greater distance from the human ships than from the galactic vessels." It was exactly what human tactical planners had hoped for. The Devourer's biological systems recognized human physiology as somehow dangerous or incompatible, making them hesitant to engage human vessels directly. "All units, implement Plan Delta," Admiral Chen commanded. Human ships advanced to contact, galactic ships maintained support positions, and provide sensor data. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. Human warships, built to survive the impossible conditions of their home world, powered directly into engagement with entities that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. The Devourers, encountering for the first time an enemy that their consumption mechanisms couldn't process, found themselves fighting a form of warfare they had never experienced. The human weapons were crude by galactic standards, relying on kinetic energy and explosive force rather than exotic energy manipulation. But they were designed with the over-engineering principles that characterized everything built by beings from a Class 13 world. When Devourer constructs attempted to absorb or deflect the incoming fire, they encountered projectiles that simply couldn't be stopped by conventional defensive measures. "Direct hit on the lead construct," reported Weapons Officer Martinez from the Thunderbolt, confirming penetration of outer biological shell and damage to internal structures. For the first time in recorded galactic history, Devourer entities were taking damage in direct combat. The entities that had once consumed entire worlds were being hurt by weapons that most galactic civilizations would have considered primitive. But the Devourers were not passive opponents. As the battle intensified, they began adapting their tactics, focusing their attacks on the galactic support vessels while avoiding direct engagement with human ships. "Admiral, the harmony of spheres is under direct assault," reported Communications Officer Park. "Galactic vessel requesting immediate support. Indomitable and relentless, break formation and provide close support," Admiral Chen commanded. All other human vessels continue primary assault patterns. The rescue operation that followed demonstrated everything that made humanity unique in galactic civilization. Human ships maneuvered through the chaotic battlefield with the same precision they used to operate in Earth's violent weather systems. They engaged Devourer constructs in close combat while simultaneously providing cover for damaged galactic vessels, treating the most dangerous battle in galactic history as simply another emergency response situation. "Admiral," Dr. Rodriguez called out excitedly, "I'm detecting massive biochemical stress signatures from the Devourer constructs. Extended exposure to human crews is causing systemic failures in their biological components." The tide of battle was turning. The Devourers, optimized for consuming life forms from stable, moderate environments, were being poisoned by prolonged contact with beings whose physiology had been forged in the crucible of a Class 13 Deathworld. "Fleet message from High Admiral Thexar," reported the communications officer. "Galactic Defense Fleet sensors are detecting Devourer constructs throughout the quarantine zone, beginning to show similar stress signatures. It appears that human presence is having a system-wide effect on their biology." Admiral Chen felt the first stirrings of hope that the operation might actually succeed. "All human vessels advanced to the center of the quarantine zone. Let's finish this." The final assault took 12 hours of continuous combat. Human ships pressed deep into territory that had been forbidden to galactic civilization for 50,000 years. Engaging Devourer constructs that grew progressively weaker as exposure to human biochemistry took its toll. The end came not with a massive explosion or dramatic final battle, but with a gradual system-wide collapse of Devourer biological functions. Entities that had once consumed planets began to break apart as their fundamental biological processes failed. The ancient enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia simply dissolved, unable to maintain cohesion when exposed to life forms that their systems couldn't process. "Admiral," reported Dr. Pretty. Rodriguez, studying the sensor readings with amazement. "It's over. All Devourer constructs are showing complete biological failure. They're all dead." The silence on the bridge stretched for long moments as the implications sank in. Humanity had done more than win a battle. They had eliminated a threat that galactic civilization had believed to be permanent and unstoppable. "Fleet-wide communication," Admiral Chen announced. "All units, this is Admiral Chen. Mission accomplished. The Devourer threat has been permanently neutralized." The celebration that erupted across the combined fleet was audible even through the formal communication channels. Species that had lived in the shadow of an ancient terror for their entire existence were suddenly free of a fear that had shaped galactic policy for 50,000 years. High Admiral Thexar's voice carried a mixture of relief, gratitude, and awe. "Admiral Chen, on behalf of galactic civilization, I want to express our profound gratitude. You have accomplished what was deemed impossible by our greatest minds and most advanced technologies." Admiral Chen looked around the bridge at her mixed crew. Humans and aliens working together with the efficiency that had made the victory possible. "Hi, Admiral. We couldn't have done this without galactic support and cooperation. But I think this demonstrates something important about what humanity can contribute to galactic civilization." And what is that, Admiral?" "Sometimes the problems that seem impossible just need to be approached by people who are too stubborn to accept impossible as an answer." As the fleet began its journey home, carrying with it proof that the ancient threat had been permanently eliminated, the galaxy began to process the implications of what had just occurred. Humanity hadn't just saved galactic civilization, they had demonstrated that their unique perspective and capabilities made previously impossible achievements suddenly attainable. The reports that flooded galactic communication networks over the following weeks transformed humanity's status from recent additions to galactic civilization to essential partners in facing the unknown challenges of a dangerous universe. Dr. Kaltis, updating the historical records with the account of the Devourer War, included a note that would be studied by historians for generations to come. The lesson of humanity's victory is not that they are superior to other species, but that their unique evolutionary history provides capabilities that complement and enhance the strengths of galactic civilization as a whole. The Class 13 Deathworld that forged humanity's ancestors has given the galaxy its greatest protectors. In the months that followed, as the galaxy adjusted to a universe without the ancient threat that had haunted it for 50 millennia, requests for human assistance poured in from across civilized space. Worlds that had been deemed too dangerous for colonization were suddenly viable with human expertise. Scientific missions to hostile environments became possible with human participation. Problems that had been considered unsolvable for generations were being tackled by beings who had never learned that some things couldn't be done. The Class 13 Deathworld had sent its children to the stars, and the galaxy discovered that sometimes the most hostile environment in known space could produce its greatest guardians. Earth had given galactic civilizations something it had never possessed before, a species that looked at the impossible and saw it simply as another job that needed to be done. The ripples from that first contact continued to spread across the galaxy, carrying with them the transformative power of humanity's fundamental refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. In a universe full of wonders and terrors, the galaxy had finally found partners who were strong enough to face whatever challenges the cosmos might present. The story of humanity's integration into galactic civilization had become the story of how the impossible became possible, one stubborn human solution at a time.